cursor hovers over a plain download link. No gold letters, no temple door. No monk in a hood standing guard over a locked cabinet. Just a website, a PDF, and a title that sounds like it should belong to a forgotten grimoire. The Book of Aquarius. The reader clicks. A file opens on an ordinary screen in an ordinary room, and almost immediately it makes an impossible bargain. The Philosopher's Stone is real. It is not a fairy tale. It is not just an allegory for spiritual growth. It is a physical substance, the book says, and if you make it correctly, it can do the two things human beings have wanted for as long as records have existed. It can make wealth, and it can fight death. The promise is not modest. The stone can turn base metals into gold. It can heal the body. It can rejuvenate the old. It can extend life so dramatically that the edge between medicine and immortality begins to blur. Then the book makes the promise stranger. You do not need a secret society. You do not need a royal patron. You do not need a laboratory beneath a castle, or a chest of rare minerals shipped from the ends of the earth. According to this anonymous author, the great secret of alchemy can be made at home. With patience, with heat, with time, and with one ingredient. The author does not present this as a new invention. That is the hook. The book claims it is recovering something old, something hidden under symbols, something buried beneath centuries of strange language. Dragons, suns, moons, blackness, whiteness, redness, death, rebirth, ascent, descent. The reader is told that generations of alchemists were not babbling in code because they had nothing to say. They were hiding a process. A process so powerful it had to be concealed from tyrants, fools, and the greedy. And behind those old alchemists, the trail seems to point toward a still older text. A little fragment known as the Emerald Tablet. It is only a few lines long in many versions, yet for centuries, people treated it like a key. It speaks of one thing from which all things come. It speaks of the sun as father and the moon as mother. It speaks of something rising from earth to heaven and descending again to earth, gathering the powers of both. Most famously, it gives the world a sentence that has become almost too familiar to hear clearly. That which is below is like that which is above. As above, so below. For occultists, mystics, and alchemists, that line was not decorative. It was a map. The small world mirrored the large one. The body mirrored the cosmos. The laboratory vessel mirrored creation itself. And if you understood the mirror, maybe you could change the thing reflected in it. The modern book points backward through medieval alchemical texts. Those texts point toward Arabic sources. Arabic stories point toward Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary master of hidden wisdom. Hermes points toward Thoth, the Egyptian scribe of the gods. And beyond Thoth, in one of the strangest leaps in modern occult history, some believers see a drowned world. Atlantis. If that chain is real, then the greatest treasure in history was never buried under the sea. It was translated, copied, hidden in plain sight, and uploaded as a PDF.
This is one of those stories where the first claim is so large that it almost dares you to walk away. Eternal life and unlimited wealth, from a process supposedly hidden in old alchemical texts. But the deeper you follow it, the less it feels like one claim. It starts to feel like a tunnel connecting half the occult imagination: the Philosopher's Stone, Hermes, Thoth, Egypt, Atlantis, and the dream that reality has a secret instruction manual. What makes it work as a mystery is the movement from the ordinary to the impossible. We start with a file anyone can download. Then, almost immediately, we are asked to imagine a secret that survived empires. That contrast is the spell. The room is modern, but the promise sounds older than history.
Before the Emerald Tablet can become a road to Atlantis, it has to pass through a smaller room. A room with soot on the walls. Imagine a workshop in the late medieval or early modern world. The windows are narrow. The floor is stained by spills. Shelves hold glass vessels, metal tools, powders in jars, and books written to keep the uninvited outside. In the center, there is a furnace. On the furnace sits a vessel that must not be opened too soon. Inside it, the alchemist believes nature is being coaxed, not forced. The work can take months. Some texts speak as if it takes years. The operator waits for colors. Blackness first, perhaps the sign of putrefaction. Then whiteness. Then yellow. Then red. The sequence changes from author to author, but the feeling is the same. The substance is alive in some secret way. It is passing through corruption, death, and return. The alchemist watches the vessel the way another person might watch a sickbed. He reads the glass for signs. A film on the surface. A stain near the neck. A color that seems to arrive overnight. Nothing about it feels casual. The room teaches patience by threatening loss. Even silence becomes evidence. If the vessel does nothing, the alchemist still has to decide whether nothing is failure or the hidden part of the work. Too much heat and the work is ruined. Too little and nothing happens. Open the vessel too soon and the spirit escapes. Misread the sign and months vanish into smoke. Modern chemistry would eventually separate itself from this world, but alchemy was never only a crude attempt to make gold. It was a way of thinking about matter, spirit, medicine, time, and salvation, all at once. The alchemist looked at lead and saw not merely a metal, but something unfinished. Nature was always working toward perfection, slowly, under the earth. The art was to help nature finish its work faster. Gold was perfect metal, incorruptible, brilliant, resistant to decay. If a substance could perfect metals, perhaps it could perfect the human body too. That is why the Philosopher's Stone became more than a tool of wealth. It became a medicine, a cure for disease, a way to restore youth. In some tellings, a doorway to astonishingly long life. This is the part of the story that is easy to treat as greed. Kings wanted gold. Alchemists wanted patrons. Fraudsters could sell hope to the desperate. But inside the old dream, gold and immortality were not separate. They were two faces of one desire, to find the principle of perfection. If base metal could be lifted into gold, maybe a mortal body could be lifted out of decay. That idea made alchemy powerful, even when it failed at the furnace. Because the furnace was also a theater. Inside the sealed vessel, the substance died. It rotted. It dissolved. It rose as vapor. It condensed. It returned. It changed color. It became something new. The old phrase was, waiting for a scene like this. As above, so below. That line did not float in from nowhere. It was attached to the Emerald Tablet, the little hermetic text that generations of alchemists treated like a compressed revelation. The tablet gave the work a cosmic shape, without giving away the work itself. So when the Book of Aquarius appeared in 2011 and announced that the stone could be made, it was not inventing the hunger. It was speaking into a hunger centuries old. The anonymous author wrote as if the fog could finally be cleared. The old masters had been too cautious, too symbolic, too afraid. They had hidden the raw simplicity of the work behind mythic language. Now, the book claimed the symbols could be stripped away. One matter, one vessel, one process. The old workshop had become a PDF. The furnace had become an instruction manual. The promise had survived the age of kings and monasteries, then slipped into the age of search engines. But the emotional engine was unchanged. Somewhere, hidden in ordinary matter, there might be a power that makes gold from corruption, health from sickness, youth from age, and life from death.
The stone matters because it sits where greed turns into something stranger. If all you want is gold, alchemy is a get-rich story. But if gold is perfected matter, then the stone becomes the hope that decay is not final. The old language sounds strange, but it is not random. The dragon, the king, the queen, the sun, the moon. Those images gave alchemists a way to talk about matter as if it had a life story. In their world, transformation was not just technical. It was moral, cosmic, and physical at the same time. That keeps the dream breathing.
The Book of Aquarius has the tone of a person who thinks the secret has been made unnecessarily difficult. Again and again, it argues that alchemical language is a veil. The old writers, in this reading, were not confused. They were cautious. They wrote for initiates, not outsiders. They scattered the recipe across metaphors, so that only the patient and worthy could assemble it. The anonymous author pushes against that tradition. He says the stone is natural. The process is natural. It does not require supernatural intervention. It does not require belief in any religion. The art, as he presents it, is a hidden branch of nature. And then he adds the part that makes the claim dangerous to the imagination. The ingredient is not rare. That matters. A secret made from rare stones or lost plants can remain safely distant. A secret requiring temple initiations can be left in the ancient world. But a secret made from something ordinary changes the feeling of the room you are sitting in. Suddenly, the treasure is not far away. It is embarrassingly close. The book says that older texts called the matter by many names: mercury, water, chaos, dragon, our earth, our stone. The names shift because the authors were trying to conceal what they meant. The same substance could be described as vile and precious, common and ignored, rejected by the world and loved by philosophers. That pattern appears again and again in alchemical writing. The secret matter is everywhere, yet no one sees it. It is cheap, yet priceless. It is despised, yet it holds the treasure of the wise. For a modern reader, that is exactly the kind of riddle that creates obsession. If the ingredient is rare, the story ends. If the ingredient is common, every sentence becomes a clue. What is everywhere but overlooked? What comes from life but is discarded? What would ancient writers hide behind 100 names because saying it plainly would make the great work sound absurd? The Book of Aquarius delays, explains, insists, and finally names it. Urine. Or, written without any ceremony at all, urine. The word lands with an almost physical jolt, because it drags the dream of immortality into the most ordinary human fact. The author argues that this is precisely why it was hidden. The substance is not glamorous. It is not golden. It is not something a king would display in a jeweled cup. It is waste, and yet the book claims it contains what the work requires because it has recently passed through a living body. This is where tone matters. It is easy to laugh, and plenty of readers do. But the history of alchemy is filled with substances that cross the boundary between disgust and power. Rotting matter, dung, blood, ash, salts, vapors, fermentation, decay. Alchemists were fascinated by the place where life becomes waste and waste becomes food for new life. Putrefaction was not merely filth. It was a stage in transformation. A seed rots before it grows. A corpse returns to the earth. Fermentation produces heat and spirit from decay. In that older imagination, the line between corruption and generation was not clean. So the Book of Aquarius takes a shocking claim and gives it a traditional frame. The rejected matter is the chosen matter. The low thing hides the high thing. The treasure is not where pride would look for it. The process the book describes is long, repetitive, and severe. It involves collecting the matter, heating it, distilling, calcining, recombining, waiting, watching. The language is modernized, but the pattern is old. Separate and join, dissolve and fix, raise and return. And online, some readers did not treat this as metaphor. They treated it as instructions. They bought glassware. They built homemade setups. They waited for colors. They watched for signs. They tried to turn a bodily waste product into the medicine of immortality. That is what makes the Book of Aquarius more than a strange PDF. It turns the great work into a practical home procedure. It takes the old alchemical dream out of the museum case and puts it on a kitchen counter, where the danger is no longer only intellectual. The same rhythm appears in the emerald tablet. It ascends from earth to heaven, then descends again to earth, and receives the force of things above and below. For a believer, this is not a coincidence. The tablet is the skeleton key. It tells you the shape of the process without naming the ingredient. It says the work moves upward and downward. It says the subtle must be separated from the gross. It says a single thing can generate wonders. The Book of Aquarius reads the tablet as if it is the ancient master recipe in miniature. And once you accept that possibility, the question changes. The question is no longer only whether one anonymous internet author made a wild claim. The question becomes why so many people, across so many centuries, believe that a few cryptic lines attributed to Hermes could open the locked door of nature. To answer that, the trail has to leave the modern screen and descend into a much older room. A crypt beneath a statue. The story begins in darkness. A seeker named Belinus, known in the tradition as a version of Apollonius of Tyana, comes upon a hidden chamber beneath a statue of Hermes. The statue is not just a marker. It is a sign that wisdom has been buried deliberately, placed below the visible world, waiting for the one who knows where to look. Belinus descends. In the chamber, according to the frame story preserved in Arabic Hermetic tradition, he finds an old man seated on a golden throne. The old man is holding a tablet of emerald. Nearby is a book. The scene feels engineered to be remembered. A statue above, a crypt below. Hermes as guardian, an ancient figure seated like a corpse and a king at once. A green tablet in his hands. This is not the dry discovery of a manuscript in an archive. It is revelation staged as archaeology. Knowledge is not written by a contemporary author. It is found. It is recovered from the dead. It is older than the finder, older than the city, perhaps older than the present age of the world. That is one reason the Emerald Tablet became so powerful. Its frame already tells you how to feel about it. You are not reading an essay. You are entering a tomb. The text itself is brief, but it speaks with absolute confidence. Truth, without falsehood, certain and most true. What is below is like what is above. All things come from one thing. The sun is its father. The moon is its mother. The wind carries it in its belly. The earth is its nurse. It rises from earth to heaven. It descends again to earth. It receives the power of superior and inferior things. By it, the glory of the world is obtained. Darkness flees. This is the strong force of all forces, because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. Then comes the claim of authorship. Thus, the world was created. From this come wondrous adaptations. And the speaker is Hermes Trismegistus, having the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world. For an alchemist, those lines do not sound like poetry only. They sound like instructions that have been compressed until they almost stop being instructions. Separate the subtle from the gross. Move upward and downward. Join heaven and earth. Work with one thing from which all things proceed. For a mystic, they sound like metaphysics. For a magician, they sound like a law of correspondence. For a philosopher, they sound like a theory of unity. That ambiguity made the tablet durable. It could survive because it was not pinned down. It could be read as laboratory procedure, spiritual ascent, cosmic diagram, or all of them together. Now imagine that story being copied in a different room, centuries later. A scribe bends over the page. The lamp smokes. The ink is thick. Around him are shelves of works on medicine, stars, numbers, metals, prayer, and hidden forces. Greek names have passed through Syriac hands. Egyptian gods have taken Greek masks. Old authorities speak Arabic now, and Arabic readers answer back. In that world, Hermes is not merely a name on a title page. He is a door. A teaching placed in the mouth of Hermes seems to come from before ordinary teachers, before schools, before disputes. It comes from the source, or at least from a past deep enough to feel like the source. The framed story matters because it changes where authority comes from. Belinus does not invent the tablet. He finds it. He does not argue his way into authority. He descends into it. The finder becomes a messenger. The real author is the past. And the older the past becomes, the stronger the spell. So the Emerald Tablet enters history with a built-in mystery, a secret beneath Hermes, a tablet in the hands of the dead, a text that seems to describe the architecture of transformation. But then the next question rises immediately. Who was Hermes? Was he a philosopher? A god? A memory of Egyptian priests? A name placed over many authors? Or the last visible figure in a chain that leads somewhere older still?
Okay, wait. This is where the story gets its teeth. Because a normal writer can be doubted. A normal teacher can be argued with. But a tablet pulled from beneath a statue of Hermes, in a chamber, with an old man and a book beside him. That feels less like an opinion and more like a message smuggled out of the dead. And once a text feels recovered instead of written, the mind starts asking a dangerous question. Recovered from what?
Hermes Trismegistus is a name made from a meeting. On one side stands Hermes, the Greek messenger god, quick, clever, boundary crossing, associated with language, travel, mediation, and trickery. On the other stands Thoth, the Egyptian scribe of the gods, keeper of writing, reckoning, sacred knowledge, medicine, astronomy, and magic. When Greek and Egyptian worlds intertwined, these figures were identified with one another. Hermes became a way of speaking about Thoth, and Thoth became a way of deepening Hermes into something older and more priestly. The result was Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice greatest. In the imagination of late antiquity and beyond, Hermes was not just a god's name. He became the author of revelations. Texts attributed to him spoke about the divine mind, the structure of the cosmos, the ascent of the soul, astrology, magic, medicine, and the hidden sympathies linking all things. This is where the Emerald Tablet gains a much larger atmosphere. If Hermes is Thoth, and Thoth is the divine scribe, then the tablet is not merely a workshop note. It becomes a page from the archive of the gods. That is why Egypt matters so much in this story. To the Greeks and Romans, Egypt already felt ancient. Its temples, priesthoods, inscriptions, and animal-headed gods seemed to belong to a civilization with access to time on a different scale. Egypt became a screen onto which outsiders projected dreams of primordial wisdom. A Greek philosopher could imagine Egyptian priests preserving knowledge older than Greece. A Renaissance magician could imagine Egypt as the first library of sacred science. A modern occult writer could imagine Egypt as the visible remains of an inheritance from somewhere even older. Thoth sits at the center of that imagination because he is the god who writes. Writing changes the feeling of knowledge. A spoken teaching can vanish. A written teaching can sleep. It can cross empires. It can be misread, copied, translated, hidden, and rediscovered. It can look dead until someone opens it. A tablet is the perfect symbol for that kind of survival. Stone, metal, or emerald. It suggests knowledge hardened against time. When later traditions place a tablet in Hermes' hands, they are not just choosing a dramatic prop. They are choosing the fantasy of a message that can outlast collapse. And if a message can outlast collapse, then collapse itself becomes less final. That is where Atlantis begins to glow at the edge of the story. Plato's dialogues Timaeus and Critias tell of Atlantis through a chain of transmission. Egyptian priests tell Solon, the Athenian lawgiver, about an ancient island power that existed thousands of years earlier. Atlantis becomes a memory preserved by Egypt after catastrophe. Whether read as philosophy, legend, or historical echo, the frame is powerful. Egypt remembers what Greece has forgotten. For believers in lost civilizations, this is irresistible. If Egypt preserves older knowledge, and Thoth is Egypt's divine scribe, and Hermes is Thoth under another name, then the Emerald Tablet can be imagined as a surviving shard from before recorded history. The chain begins to assemble itself. Atlantis falls. Survivors carry wisdom to Egypt. Egyptian priests preserve it under Thoth. Thoth becomes Hermes. Arabic writers preserve the secret in code. Latin translators carry it into Europe. Alchemists chase it in furnaces. Newton copies it at his desk. And finally, a modern anonymous author releases the key online. It is a breathtaking chain. It is also exactly the kind of chain that esoteric history loves. Long enough to feel ancient, broken enough to require interpretation, and grand enough to explain why the present seems diminished. The appeal is emotional as much as intellectual. If Atlantis held the secret, then modern humanity did not invent wisdom slowly. It lost wisdom catastrophically. History is not progress from darkness into light. It is amnesia after a golden age. Every fragment becomes a clue. Every old inscription becomes a survivor. Every strange myth becomes a memory of something real. And the Emerald Tablet, with its green gleam and compressed cosmic language, becomes one of the most tempting fragments of all. So by this point, we have three things tangled together: a medieval alchemical text, an Egyptian god of writing, and a modern dream of Atlantis. Atlantis was the dream. Egypt was the mask. Hermes was the name. But the thing that carried the secret into the modern world was quieter, stranger, and far more dangerous to meaning. Translation. There is a quieter scene in this story, less dramatic than a crypt and less glamorous than Atlantis, but it may be the most important scene of all. A translator bends over an Arabic manuscript. The room is cold. The lamp is close to the page. A finger tracks the line so the eye does not slip. One word refuses to behave. Above. Below. Subtle. Gross. The translator chooses a Latin word, pauses, scratches it out, and tries another. He is not trying to create a famous occult sentence. He is trying to make a difficult text cross a border without dying on the way. He cannot know what the sentence will become. He cannot know that centuries later, people will quote it in magic shops, psychology books, tattoo designs, conspiracy forums, and alchemical manuals. This is how secrets really travel. Not as one clean golden chain, but as ink under pressure. A text crosses a border and changes shape. It enters a new library. It is read by people with different fears and different hopes. They see things in it that earlier readers may not have seen. From roughly the 12th century onward, Latin Europe absorbed a flood of knowledge through Arabic sources. Philosophy, medicine, mathematics, astrology, and alchemy moved through translation centers and scholarly networks. The Emerald Tablet came with that larger current. Once it arrived, it found readers who were already waiting for a key. Medieval and Renaissance alchemists saw in the tablet a master statement of their art. One medieval commentator, known as Hortolanus, treated it as a foundational guide to the alchemical work. The text's strange sequence of above and below, subtle and gross, ascent and descent, fit the laboratory imagination perfectly. The tablet did not need to be long. Its brevity was part of its power. A long manual can be checked against results. A short oracle can generate commentaries forever. If an instruction fails, perhaps the reader misunderstood. If a phrase seems vague, perhaps it hides a deeper layer. If two passages seem contradictory, perhaps they refer to different stages of the work. The text remains pure because interpretation absorbs the failure. That is one way esoteric authority survives. Ambiguity is not a weakness. It is armor. In Europe, the philosopher's stone became entangled with Christian symbolism, Neoplatonic metaphysics, medicine, metallurgy, and courtly ambition. Alchemists wrote in riddles, not only to conceal, but to elevate. The work was not supposed to be simple chemistry. It was supposed to require moral discipline, purified perception, and patience. A recipe anyone could follow would not feel like a sacred art. So the language thickened. The king must die. The queen must be united. The dragon devours its tail. The sun and moon marry. The child is born. The black crow appears. The white stone emerges. The red tincture completes the work. Somewhere inside those images, many readers believed was a practical sequence. Others saw a map of the soul. Many saw both. Then, centuries later, the story reaches a desk that can surprise modern listeners. Isaac Newton, the emblem of rational science, copied and translated the Tabula Smaragdina, the Emerald Tablet's Latin name. Newton's surviving alchemical manuscripts show that his mind did not divide the universe, the way later textbooks often divide it for us. Gravity Optics, prophecy, chronology, matter, spirit, and alchemy all belong to one giant attempt to read God's creation. Newton's interest does not solve the mystery. It deepens it. Because now the Emerald Tablet is not just drifting through occult margins. It is sitting on the desk of the man who helped remake the universe. For many serious early modern thinkers, alchemy was not the opposite of inquiry. It was inquiry into a nature they believed was alive, with hidden structure. They wanted to know how matter changed, how invisible forces acted, and how divine order expressed itself in the physical world. The Emerald Tablet spoke directly to that hunger. One thing gives rise to all things. Above mirrors below. The subtle penetrates the solid. The hidden force of nature can be known by the wise. At Newton's desk, the tablet is no longer just a tomb object or a medieval charm. It is part of the intellectual weather from which modern science itself emerged. That is what makes the later Atlantis claim so tempting. If a text could pass from Arabic manuscripts to Latin alchemists to Newton's notes, then why not imagine one more step backward? Why not let the chain run beyond Egypt, beyond Greece, beyond the beginning of recorded history? Why not Atlantis?
And this is the part that makes me uncomfortable, in the best way. Because we can laugh at alchemy now. We can picture the smoky room, the failed experiments, the strange symbols. But Newton did not laugh it out of the room. Once Newton is in the room, the easy version of the story dies. It does not prove the stone. It does not settle the old promises. But it tells us that the boundary between science and hidden knowledge was once much softer than we like to imagine. In Newton's world, the question was not science or magic, the way we might say it now. The question was how unseen forces moved through matter. And the tablet sounded like it knew.
Atlantis enters the Emerald Tablet story like a door opening in a wall that was already covered in symbols. At first, the door is Plato. In Timaeus and Critias, Atlantis is described through a memory chain. Egyptian priests tell Solon of an ancient power that existed thousands of years before his time. The island is wealthy, mighty, organized, and eventually morally corrupted. It wars against ancient Athens and is destroyed in a catastrophic sinking. Plato's story has everything later imaginations need. Lost archives, Egyptian priests, deep time, catastrophe, a civilization erased by water, and the suggestion that humanity's past is larger than ordinary memory. But Plato does not give us the Emerald Tablet. The connection has to be made later, through the figure of Thoth. If Thoth is the scribe of divine knowledge, and if Egypt preserves memories from before catastrophe, then Thoth can become the keeper of Atlantean wisdom. Hermes Trismegistus, identified with Thoth, can then become the transmitter of that wisdom into Hermetic texts. The chain is not difficult to understand. It is difficult to resist. But the most explicit version of the Emerald and Atlantis fusion comes much later, through Maurice Doreal. Doreal was a 20th-century occult figure associated with the Brotherhood of the White Temple. In the 1940s and early 1950s, a text circulated under the title, The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. It claimed to translate ancient tablets connected to Thoth, Atlantis, the pyramids, hidden chambers, cosmic laws, cycles of souls, and vast prehistoric knowledge. Doriel did something powerful. He did not merely comment on an old tradition. He gave it a new origin story. He took Thoth out of the temple and placed him before the flood. He made Egypt the inheritance, Atlantis the source, and the tablets the surviving technology of a vanished world. Now the mythology is complete. The pyramid becomes a vault. Egypt becomes the heir. Thoth becomes the Atlantean teacher. The tablets become physical carriers of lost science and spiritual law. For a modern seeker already drawn to the Emerald Tablet, the title alone is magnetic. Emerald Tablet. Emerald Tablets. Hermes. Thoth. Atlantis. Alchemy. Immortality. Cosmic law. The overlap feels too perfect to ignore. Before the categories separate, the fusion has enormous narrative force. It gives the old alchemical fragment a cinematic origin. No longer is the tablet merely a short hermetic text moving through Arabic and Latin traditions. It becomes a survivor from a drowned super-civilization, a remnant of humanity before the fall. And that changes the emotional stakes. If the Emerald Tablet is Atlantean, then alchemy is not a medieval dream. It is degraded ancient science. The stone is not impossible. It is forgotten technology. The secrecy is not merely symbolic, it is the aftermath of catastrophe. The crypt beneath Hermes is not a literary frame. It is a storage chamber in a planetary disaster story. Modern occultism often works by joining traditions that once moved separately. Theosophy, Hermeticism, Atlantis speculation, pyramid mysteries, Eastern religious vocabulary, ceremonial magic, and early science fiction imagery can all merge into a single mythic history. In that blended world, ancient masters preserved laws of vibration, energy, consciousness, and matter that modern institutions supposedly ignore. Doriel's Thoth belongs to that atmosphere. The voice is grand. The timescale is vast. Atlantis leads to Egypt. Egypt leads to hidden halls. And the hidden halls open into cosmic cycles. The reader is not simply being told about the past. The reader is being invited into a secret lineage. And that invitation resembles the one made by the Book of Aquarius. You are not outside the mystery anymore. You are receiving what was hidden. That is the psychological pattern connecting the modern PDF, the alchemical workshop, the Arabic crypt story, the Hermetic author, the Egyptian scribe, and the Atlantean master. Each stage says, the world you inherited is missing its most important knowledge, but the missing knowledge survived in fragments, and one of those fragments is now in front of you. This is why the story can keep moving even when each link becomes harder to prove. The chain satisfies a need deeper than evidence. It gives shape to the feeling that modern life is surrounded by dead matter and lost meaning, while the old world knew that matter was alive. In that sense, Atlantis is not only a place. It is the name for the missing source. The lost beginning. The civilization that can explain why Egypt seems too old. Why Hermes sounds too wise. Why the tablet feels too compressed. Why alchemists wrote as if they were protecting something. And why the promise of the stone refuses to die. By now, the chain feels almost complete. A modern recipe, a medieval stone, an Arabic crypt, Hermes, Thoth, Egypt, Atlantis. Each link pulls on the next. And then, just when the story seems to have found its source, the emerald begins to crack. And then, after all the green light, all the pyramids, all the whispered promises of lost science, the emerald cracks. Because there is not one tablet in this story. There are two. On one side is the Emerald Tablet, or Tabula Smaragdina, a short Hermetic text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, known through medieval Arabic and Latin transmission. Beloved by alchemists because its language seems to describe transformation at every scale. On the other side is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, a much later occult work associated with Maurice Doreal, presenting a sweeping myth of Thoth, Atlantis, pyramids, hidden wisdom, and cosmic law. The titles rhyme. The symbols overlap. The atmosphere is similar, but the historical trails are different. The oldest known versions of the short Emerald Tablet are not physical tablets hauled from the ruins of Atlantis. They are preserved in Arabic works from roughly the 8th to 10th centuries of the Common Era, in the world of Hermetic, alchemical, philosophical, and mystical writing. Those Arabic contexts may draw on older, late antique Greek or Syriac materials. Scholars continue to discuss the layers behind them. But the evidence we can point to begins there, not in a drowned island before history. The crypt story of Belinus is powerful, but it is a story inside that tradition. It is not a museum record of an Atlantean artifact. The Hermes behind the tablet is a legendary authorial figure, a fusion of Greek Hermes and Egyptian Thoth, surrounded by centuries of reverence and attribution. That matters historically. It means the name carries cultural authority. It does not mean that every text bearing the name can be traced to a single ancient hand. Plato's Atlantis is also more specific than later retellings often make it. In the dialogues, the story comes through Egyptian priests speaking to Solon, and Atlantis is placed about 9,000 years before Solon. That is already a staggering time depth, but it is not the same as the larger numbers that circulate in modern occult systems, and Plato does not connect Atlantis to the Emerald Tablet or the Philosopher's Stone. Doreal's Atlantean Thoth material belongs to the 20th century. That does not make it unimportant. It is important precisely because it shows how modern, esoteric culture welded older symbols into a new mythic machine. But it is not the ancient Emerald Tablet that medieval alchemists commented on, or Newton copied. This is the late turn in the story. The clean chain breaks. Not because every part of it is meaningless, but because the links are not the same kind of links. A medieval Arabic Hermetic text, a Greek-Egyptian divine identification, Plato's philosophical Atlantis story, Renaissance alchemy, Newton's manuscripts, Doreal's 20th century occult tablets, and a 2011 Internet Alchemy manual do not form one uninterrupted document trail. They form a constellation. And constellations are real patterns in the human mind, even when the stars are far apart. The Book of Aquarius uses old alchemical language to argue for a modern recipe. Its ingredient claim remains an assertion, not a result anyone has publicly demonstrated. Its promise of rejuvenation, healing, life extension, and transmutation belongs to the long tradition of alchemical hope, but hope is not the same as proof. Newton's copying of the tablet shows that alchemy occupied serious minds. It does not show that the stone could make gold or extend life. The Arabic preservation of the Emerald Tablet shows a remarkable movement of ideas across languages and civilizations. It does not show that the text came from Atlantis. Dorio's Atlantean tablets show how powerfully modern occult writers reimagined Thoth as a survivor from a lost world. They do not move the short Emerald Tablet back tens of thousands of years. So what remains when the Atlantis origin falls away? More than nothing. The grounded story is still strange. A brief Hermetic text appears in medieval Arabic sources with a tomb discovery frame vivid enough to haunt the imagination. It moves into Latin Europe. It becomes a central object of alchemical interpretation. It enters the notebooks and libraries of people trying to understand matter, spirit, and creation. Its most famous line becomes one of the most enduring occult formulas in the world. Centuries later, new authors attach it to Atlantis, pyramids, and immortality, because the text still feels ancient enough to bear the weight. That is not a small afterlife. It is an extraordinary one. And it suggests that the real secret of the Emerald Tablet may not be a hidden ingredient. It may be a structure of desire.
This is the turn, and I do not think it makes the story smaller. It makes it sharper. Because once the two tablet traditions split apart, we are not just asking whether Atlantis left a recipe. We are asking why people keep needing the recipe to come from Atlantis in the first place. And I think that need matters. It tells us the Atlantis claim was never only about geography. It was about authority. If the secret came from a lost world, then it outranks the present. That is a different kind of mystery. It is less about a sunken island and more about hunger. Why does a text feel stronger when it is imagined as lost and recovered? Why does ancient science keep returning whenever the present feels spiritually thin? And why do we trust a secret more when we believe someone tried to bury it?
Return to the ordinary room. The PDF is still open. The promise is still there. Wealth and life. Gold and healing. A rejected substance transformed into medicine. A hidden process made public after centuries of secrecy. The modern reader may now know that the chain is broken. The Emerald Tablet of the alchemists is not the same as Dorio's Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. The oldest known versions of the short tablet do not come from Atlantis. The ingredient named by the Book of Aquarius is not a verified key to immortality. The evidence does not turn the Philosopher's Stone into a working home procedure. But the reader may also understand why the promise worked. Because the Emerald Tablet is almost perfectly designed to survive. It is short enough to memorize, strange enough to invite commentary, ancient enough to command respect, practical enough for alchemists, mystical enough for philosophers, cosmic enough for occultists, and ambiguous enough to cross centuries without being exhausted. Every age can see itself in it. For medieval alchemists, it could describe the making of the stone. For Renaissance magicians, it could describe correspondences linking heaven and earth. For Newton's world, it could belong to the hidden architecture of nature. For 20th-century occultism, it could be drawn toward Atlantis and ancient masters. For an internet age seeker, it could become a clue in a public domain manual, promising that the old secret was finally simple. That adaptability is not an accident of the story. It is the story. The tablet survived because it never gave too much away. It kept its center veiled. It promised unity, but did not settle the meaning of unity. It promised transformation, but did not name the substance clearly. It promised power, but made interpretation part of the path. Secret traditions often survive this way, not because they hide one stable answer perfectly for thousands of years, but because they create a form in which longing can keep renewing itself. The longing changes names. Gold. Medicine. Immortality. Atlantis. Lost science. Cosmic consciousness. A final proof that the visible world is not all there is. The Emerald Tablet did not need to come from a drowned super-civilization to become powerful. Its power came from something more portable, the conviction that the world is written in correspondences and that a person who learns the language can participate in creation rather than merely endure it. That idea is beautiful. It is dangerous too. Beautiful because it refuses to see matter as dead. It imagines a universe filled with relationship, pattern, and meaning. It asks whether transformation outside us and transformation inside us might be connected. Dangerous, because the hunger for hidden knowledge can make every gap look like a cover-up, every ambiguity look like a signed confession from the past. The history of the Emerald Tablet sits exactly on that edge. It is not the lost operating manual of Atlantis. It is not a demonstrated recipe for living forever. It is a small, brilliant, elusive text that moved through Arabic, Latin, medieval, Renaissance, early modern, and modern occult worlds, gathering dreams as it went. And maybe that is why the softer ending is the truer one. The tablet does not prove that Atlantis taught Egypt the secret of immortality. It proves that human beings keep imagining a secret worth preserving after the flood. A secret that says the low thing and the high thing belong together, that matter can rise. That spirit can descend, that death and decay may hide a process we do not yet understand. That the universe might be a book, and every age is born wanting to read the page it lost. Somewhere, an alchemist watches a vessel darken. Somewhere, Newton copies a line in Latin. Somewhere, Thoth bends over the record of the gods. Somewhere, Atlantis sinks again beneath the water of imagination. And somewhere, a modern reader looks at an ordinary substance, an ordinary room, an ordinary life, and wonders whether the great secret was hidden, not because it was far away, but because it was too close to respect. The Emerald Tablet's final magic may be this: it turns the world into a clue. Not always a reliable clue. Not always a safe one. But a clue bright enough that, for more than 1,000 years, people have kept picking it up, holding it to the light, and asking whether the green glow is only reflection or the last surviving shimmer of a door.